interrupt this program to bring you Courage, the Cowardly Dog Month.
Whole month of Courage, the Cowardly Dog. First appearing in 1996, it was picked up by Cartoon Network, who work in the middle of Burbank, and directed by cartoonist John Dilworth. Though many years have passed since the original air date, it's now time for Zack to celebrate this great show.
Well, old sport, what do you think? Neat. Hey guys, Zack here, and welcome back to Courage Month. So, today's review, we're going to be covering Hard Drive Courage and Ride of the Valkyries, so let's get into both of those. Okay, so this episode, Hard Drive Courage, is actually interesting in that it's one of the first episodes to extensively use CGI as a main plot mechanic, and also it's kind of interesting in that Courage winds up going into the computer to go and save Muriel, which is interesting. But in any case, the episode starts off with Eustace being sick, and Courage and Muriel are trying to find remedies to actually kind of heal him a little bit. Courage is currently dressed in full scrubs and is kind of handling everything so that he doesn't get sick. Even though he's a dog and probably couldn't get sick with whatever Eustace has anyway. But in any case, one of Muriel's home remedies is actually some gelatin, which Eustace actually does wind up eating, but when he slurps it down, he knows that it has an interesting flavor to it, and she remarks that is likely the vinegar she put in it, which causes Eustace to start retching and vomiting, and actually takes Courage's scrub hat to actually vomit into, and at which point Muriel points out that she likely needs to find another remedy to actually help Eustace, and decides that probably the best remedy for the job is likely her recipe for artichoke syrup soup, which Eustace is happy about, and says that he'll take anything except leeches, and is revealed to have leeches on his stomach, which are currently trying to cure him, and that's not actually how leeches work, but and that was a thing, by the way. People used to think that you could use leeches to cure illnesses, which is wrong. But in any case, Courage and Muriel then proceed to go down to the kitchen and start looking for their onions for their soup. And she doesn't, and Muriel isn't having any luck, and Courage is currently rifling through her filing cabinets to actually try and find where the recipe might be. But eventually, Muriel does find the recipe, only to discover that the recipe is missing. It's not even in her book. There's just a big hole where the recipe should be. And at which point she wonders where else they could actually go to get the recipe, and Courage actually has a bright idea and brings her to the computer to actually figure it out. As Courage is actually looking things up, Muriel notes that there are so many colorful buttons and decides to press one, which is heavily implied to be internet porn. Courage is implied to have a link to internet porn on the computer, which Muriel blushes at and goes to go make some tea to actually kind of clear her mind about it, and the computer then proceeds to ask Courage to press the button again, but Courage just rips the button out of the keyboard so that it doesn't happen again. And which point he asks the computer to find him a recipe for artichoke syrup soup, which the computer does, but does remark that it'll take 43 hours to actually find, so Courage decides to go down and eat some milk and cookies while it downloads. But unaware that while he leaves, a virus actually winds up infecting the computer, and the computer winds up getting sick, I guess is the best word. It winds up getting a computer virus because apparently what it was downloading was not secure and actually could not be downloaded. But in case, as Courage is actually munching down his cookies, and Muriel finally recovers from the porn, she then wonders if Courage is having any luck actually finding the recipe, and decides to actually go up and check on him, unaware that he's not actually in the attic. At which point she comes in to see the infected computer, and the infected computer tells her to push button X, which she does. Which winds up resulting in her being transported to the inside of the computer. And Courage, who walks in, sees this whole thing, sees her disappear inside the computer, and kind of freaks out a little bit and wonders what he's supposed to do. And the computer, through very broken English, because it currently has a virus, tells him to climb into the scanner, and so that he can actually go in and actually fight the computer virus hand to hand. So he gets inside. So he does wind up crawling into the what is it called, the scanner, and winds up scanning himself. At which point we get to that 3D CGI segment that I was talking to you guys about earlier, because Courage actually winds up in a large reflective room. He is in 3D, and it is one of the few instances where they use extensive 3D work to actually animate something. That there's an entire extended animation sequence in here, and it does wind up becoming important later. Very later, because this winds up being a basis for another episode very late down the line. I will get to that in a minute. But in any case, as Courage is actually observing all of the different reflections that are along the wall as he admires himself in 3D, he actually hears Muriel calling to him and eventually notices an exit and actually runs toward it and climbs through. Once again, turning back into 2D, but now made out of ones and zeros. And he actually goes to finds Muriel, who states that she must have pushed the wrong button. But then she is attacked by the hard drive virus himself, who actually grabs her and pulls her away and pulls her deeper into the computer. So Courage tries to follow her, and in the process, he's actually attacked by a large iron mouth and a giant snake-like mouse, or computer mouse, I should mention, computer mouse. But eventually he does manage to find the hard drive virus, who currently has turned Muriel into a literal motherboard. He's actually stored her in the CPU. And also he notices a check that just says RAM on it. At which point the computer virus tells Courage that he's not supposed to be there, and that he's not feeling his best. And that he was not going to let Muriel go until he feels better, and that he should say goodbye to his mother, because she's his motherboard now. At which point he then summons a literal ram to destroy Courage, and it breaks Courage up into a series of ones and zeros, who all make his signature gibberish yelling that he does throughout all the episodes of the series. And then he summons a bunch of computer components to actually finish Courage off. But Courage manages to reform himself into a mace and just kind of flattens them all, which causes the hard drive virus to become annoyed, pointing out that that's no way to actually treat your CPU. At which point he summons Bill to get the hard drive itself, which actually shows up and tries to shred Courage with the blades on his back, which isn't how hard drives work, but is cartoon, so I'll allow it. But in any case, Courage then winds up using the fact that he can shapeshift now the fact that he can turn himself into other things, not necessarily shapeshift. He's already been doing that, but the fact that he can turn himself into other things to actually turn himself into a can of soda and then spray the hard drive, which causes it to collapse, saying that that's no way to treat your equipment. At which point the hard drive points out that the dog is a menace and then starts coughing and sneezing, and Muriel actually takes pity on the hard drive virus, wondering if he had artichoke syrup soup, which he points out he did, but it doesn't help. And then she's curious about how it didn't actually work and wonders if there's anything else that they can actually use. And the hard drive virus then remarks what else there could be to actually cure him. At which point she points out that she has several different remedies, and that there's actually something that they could immediately use. At which point Eustace then proceeds to get a call in the bedroom, which is revealed to be Courage, who, this is kind of a very old internet reference, but back in the day, the Ethernet cables used to be plugged into both the phone and the computer. Nowadays, not so much, but back in the day that you used both to, access both. At which point Courage then proceeds to actually emerge from the phone and takes Muriel's gelatin and then pulls it back through the phone with him, and with Eustace just being annoyed and complaining about telemarketers, with the leeches themselves actually chiming in, asking if it's a call for them. At which point Courage then returns the hard drive virus with the Jello in hand, and the hard drive virus is initially reluctant to eat, pointing out that he's not entirely sure if it's organic, but Courage is just telling him to shut up and eat, as it were. At which point Muriel merely explains that the only thing that's really in it is vinegar, which winds up changing the hard drive virus' entire mood, because he points out that he loves vinegar and then proceeds to eat the entire gelatin by himself in one fell swoop. Which does cause him to feel better, and he finally feels happy and no longer needs to hold Muriel hostage anymore, because now he feels a lot better. He's no longer feeling sick. So with that, Muriel and Courage then proceed to return back to the real world, where where Muriel is now armed with the knowledge of how to make artichoke syrup soup, and then brings some to Eustace, who immediately starts to feel better because of that. Meanwhile, the computer remarks to Courage that it just goes to show that you can have good ideas even if, in his own words, you're a twit. And then Courage is revealed to still be binary, which is kind of just how the episode ends, with kind of that little joke, just a reference to what happened in the episode. But yeah, this episode is mainly interesting in that it's the first episode that extensively uses CG to animate something, and there's an entire extended scene created entirely in CG, which is interesting. So the show has mostly been primarily in 2D, and I will get into that. There is something interesting that comes of this way later. But for right now, just remember that this episode was the first one to be in CG, and I will kind of get to that in a minute. But I'll kind of get to that at a later date. But in any case, yeah, that's my review of Hard Drive Courage. On to the next one. Okay, so this episode, Ride of the Valkyries, which not surprisingly has the music of the same name playing in the background for most of the episode, is about the Ride of the Valkyries. So it starts off with Muriel, Courage, and Eustace actually going on a Norway vacation. Muriel and Courage actually walk outside, and they remark that a certain species of birds actually land near where they're actually hiked out. They're actually on a cliff facing the water, and are also near a forest as well. So they're very much, again, out in the middle of nowhere, literally this time, not figuratively. Not figurative. Well, not like they're figuratively out in the middle of nowhere, not literally like they have been, where they've been living in the middle of their town. They're now figuratively in the middle of nowhere. But in any case, as they're actually remarking about what kind of birds they'll actually see, a Norwegian blue actually winds up landing near their cabin, and Courage and Muriel actually duck behind a log to actually look at it and admire how beautiful it is, which is ironic considering the Norwegian blue is very dumb looking. It's very much a kind of a slack-jawed looking bird. It's just not a very bright looking bird. But in any case, as the Norwegian blue actually sits down and starts eating, Eustace starts complaining about the TV and about how he can't understand what's actually being said on the TV because it's in Norwegian, and which he can't fully understand. And after walking outside to complain about how the TV is quote unquote broken, Muriel and Courage then tell him to shush and that they're actually watching the bird. Which Eustace then takes his frustration out on by throwing his Viking helmet that he and the rest of the family are wearing at the Norwegian blue, which causes the Norwegian blue to become upset with him and lay an egg on his head, which then hatches almost immediately and starts pecking him. And he, in the process of actually trying to swat off the Norwegian blues, he winds up falling over the cliff and winds up hitting his head severely. So yeah, Eustace winds up getting badly injured and falling off a cliff, and Muriel remarks that that's what happens when you mess with a Norwegian blue, and he kind of had it coming. Meanwhile, the Norwegian blue has actually since flown away and is actually floating away in the clouds. At which point he's actually passed by the Valkyries themselves, who almost entirely communicate through song. And they actually wind up landing on a cloud, and also start kind of set up the plot, which is that they have no idea where their sister Brunhilde is. Long story short, their leader Brunhilde is missing, and they can't find her. So they've been trying to actually figure out where she is. And also, there's a really funny kind of callback in this episode where Goose God actually appears in the episode alongside Eustace's truck. And it's implied that he actually kept the original truck, and the truck we've seen after that episode is actually a new truck, which is interesting. So, it implies that Eustace either got a new truck or built it himself, which is probably more likely in the latter case, since that's what farmers used to do in the early days of automobiles. But in any case, they're lamenting with that little side gag out of the way. Valkyries are lamenting about what they need to do to actually find their oldest sister, but when the Norwegian blue actually shows up wearing Eustace's helmet, and knowing that they believe the helmet actually belongs to their sister, they ask the Norwegian blue where they actually find her. with the Norwegian Blue kind of looking at them a little dumbly and not really understanding what they're trying to say. So one of the other sisters actually goes off to go and finds their quote unquote sister. And case in point, she actually winds up showing up at their cabin in Norway as Muriel is actually trying to prepare her soup. At which point the Valkyrie knocks on the door, and Muriel asks Courage to answer. Courage sees the Valkyrie standing at the door and just closes it. He doesn't want to deal with that, but she just puts her hand through the door and actually winds up pulling him through the hole. And then after roughing him up a little bit, she bursts through the door and declares that she has finally found Brunhilde, and that she's going to take her home to actually join them in their Ride of the Valkyries, and actually to take her back home to her place among the clouds, which Muriel is a little excited about, believing that the Valkyrie play is actually coming a bit early, but she actually winds up being picked up and scooped up by the Valkyrie and actually is carried off into the clouds, with Courage trying to keep up and actually winds up clinging to the Valkyrie's horse, and actually follows her up into the clouds as well. At which point they arrive at the fortress, where they actually host a big feast in Brunhilde's honor. With Muriel just excited with the Valkyries just excited that they've actually found their sister. At which point Muriel asks that they actually pass her some more food, but they remark that they're actually going to go to sleep and eat and finish eating because they actually have to go to war now, with the trolls. So yeah, they're going to go pick a fight with the trolls, and they need their strength, so they're going to go to sleep. And Muriel really remarks about how authentic it is, but Courage overhears this entire thing because he followed them, and realizing that they're now going to lead Muriel directly into a war zone. He realizes he needs to get Muriel out of there as soon as possible. And sure enough, when they're asleep, one of them actually has a Powerpuff Girls poster, which is really funny. Because Powerpuff Girls, I think, aired at the same time as Courage the Cowardly Dog. That's really funny that there's a cameo of that in there. But in case Courage then proceeds to sneak over to Muriel's, I don't want to call it a bed because they're literally just sleeping on stone slabs, but he sneaks over to whatever Muriel is using as a bed and tries to wake her up and pull her away, but Muriel merely points out that she's excited to be part of some sort of protection because she hasn't figured out yet that this entire thing is a real thing. And also remarks about the cute little weapons that they get to carry around, and demonstrates that by picking up her axe. But the axe winds up being way too heavy, and she actually winds up knocking down the Stonehenge-looking organization that's going around the Valkyries' beds. Which then proceeds to wake them up, and they see Courage and immediately assume he's a spy sent by the trolls. So they beat him within an inch of his life and then throw him out the window. At which point he then proceeds to land in a swamp, where he's then encountered by the trolls, who then believe that he is a spy sent by the Valkyries and decide to roast him on a spit over a fire. So yeah, long story short, they're all convinced that Courage is actually a spy, but in any case, as they're trying to cook, and the Valkyries then show up to actually go to war, with Muriel leading the charge, and that goes about as well as you would expect. The trolls and the Valkyries proceed to go to war with each other, and Muriel then proceeds to fall off her horse and is almost crushed by the trolls. But Courage actually frees himself from the spit and actually winds up picking her up and carrying her off, which catches the attention of both the trolls who are trying to crush the Valkyries, and the Valkyries themselves who want their sister back, quote unquote. But in case, Courage winds up fleeing into a cave system, and unwittingly winds up running through a curtain, where he discovers the leader of the trolls, as well as Brunhilde herself, who we finally meet in this episode. It turns out they're in love. And it turns out that they're hiding their love because they don't believe that the trolls or Valkyries respectively would understand their love. But Courage actually winds up hearing the Valkyries and the trolls actually charging into the cave from outside. And Muriel wonders if there's anything they can do to actually help them and actually solve the situation. So Courage actually decides to actually throw them a wedding as the trolls and Valkyries actually walk into the room. At which point the trolls and Valkyries actually decide to reconcile their differences, pointing out that love conquers all. And as thanks for actually uniting their two races and actually ending their long drawn out feud, the Valkyries and the Troll, Brunhilde and the Troll King actually invite Courage and Muriel to actually come to a feast in their honor. And they absolutely do. And then they reiterate once more that love conquers all. And then the episode ends with the Norwegian Blue getting revenge on Eustace by putting him on the spit that Courage was on and then just spinning him over and over. Eustace. That doesn't actually make any sense because Eustace was nowhere near where they are, but he's here. He actually there's just another recurring joke where he keeps getting knocked down the cliff again and again. When the Valkyrie shows up, they actually kick him down the cliff, but it's funny. But in any case, this episode is just interesting in that it's just an excuse to play Ride of the Valkyries in the background of an episode of Courage the Cowardly Dog, which I'm perfectly okay with. It's just kind of funny for that reason. It's just interesting that they actually do wind up confusing Muriel for their sister, even though Muriel looks nothing like Brunhilde. But it's just really funny, and I do kind of enjoy it. But in any case, that's my review of Courage the Cowardly Dog. What did you guys think? Let's get a discussion going in the comment section down below, or over on my Discord server, link in the description. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, be sure to follow me on Twitter in the description below. Be sure to check out my Patreon in the description below as well if you want to help support the show. It's only a couple bucks a month. It does really help me out, and you guys get access to a bunch of cool perks that I'm always saying thanks. So be sure to check those out in the description below as well. And also be sure to check out my Twitch down in the description below as well, because I am trying to actually grow my audience over there. And if you guys want to actually help me with that, by all means go ahead. We're also getting close to that watch along of the crossover movie coming up. So if you guys want to absolutely see that and watch that along with me, again, link is down in the description. Make sure you follow me over there so you don't miss that, because that is what we're going to be doing for the grand finale of this. Be sure to go check that out. But in any case, in any case, just thank you guys so much for watching. And until next time, I will see you guys in the next video. Peace!